And joining me now in studio to reflect on the first 100 days of Pope Leo XIV are two guests who bring deep insight into the life of the Church. Dr. Susan Timoney is Associate Dean for Graduate Ministerial Studies at the Catholic University of America, where she's also Associate Professor of Practice in Pastoral Studies, specializing in evangelization and pastoral leadership. Stephen White is Executive Director of the Catholic Project, which brings together clergy and laity to address the challenges the Catholic Church faces in the U.S. He's a leading commentator on church affairs. Well, thank you both so much for joining me for this special milestone looking at 100 days. It's been 100 days since we saw Pope Leo appear on the loggia, his style coming a bit more into focus now. Susan, how would you summarize briefly his papacy so far?
I think we've had an opportunity to see him in so many diverse situations because it's the Jubilee year and he's greeting so many different kinds of pilgrims. And for me, what stands out is his commitment to want to be seen as a shepherd and also to want to really represent the mission of the church.
Stephen, your impressions of this first 100 days?
He seems very comfortable in his own skin. He wears the office, I don't want to say lightly, but well, he seems comfortable in his own skin, and he doesn't seem to be in too much of a rush. I think he's still figuring out what kind of pope he's going to be, still figuring out what the job means for him and for the church. So I think in addition to being able to see him with all these different pilgrims for the Jubilee, I think he seems very comfortable in the role in a reassuring and edifying way.
Well, on that note, in Jubilee crowds, and his biggest crowd yet, 1 million young people attended the prayer vigil at the Tor Vergata on the outskirts of Rome for the Jubilee of Youth prayer vigil. Take a look at this video our social media team put together to look at those parallel moments of Pope Leo and St. John Paul II when he hosted World Youth Day there in the Jubilee year 2000. Let's talk about the parallels that we're already starting to see between Pope Leo and his papal predecessors so far. Stephen, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I do. I was in that field in the year 2000. It was quite warm, as I recall. You know, you want to be careful making comparisons to a man who's a canonized saint. But I think there are some similarities in both sort of the ease of personality. I have to confess that there have been a couple times where I've seen a clip or a photo of Leo and sort of out of the corner of my eye thought it has a similar profile to John Paul II. There's something about their carriage and demeanor that I find similar. Beyond that, I think you don't want to draw too many conclusions, but I think a pope of continuity, he has that sort of easy charisma and charm that helps a man in his office. So,
Susan, do you have thoughts on that? Parallels between recent papal predecessors, even Benedict or Francis?
I think he is able to demonstrate that he's really interested in people. And I think he does have an interest in young people. He seems comfortable around young people. He seems comfortable in the space. And so I think that helps them say, here's someone we want to listen to.
You've already hit on this, Stephen, but there are church watchers who have observed he seems at ease in his role. He seems to really enjoy it as well. What do you make of that assessment, and how much does being the ripe young age of 69 contribute to that?
Well, I don't know the man, so it's tough to answer that question. I mean, I think there is this ease in the role and holding that office that is good, and we've commented on that. I think there's also a way in which he is very aware of the office, and perhaps it's the case, I don't know, perhaps it's the case that understanding that the office is bigger than just him, that kind of boundary around what is expected of you and what you can do might, in a way, be liberating. He doesn't have to reinvent the thing, right? He just be yourself within the office that has been laid upon your shoulders, and there's kind of a peace and freedom that can come with that. He seems, whether that's the case with him or not, but he seems, like we said already, to be at ease in his role, which is good.
Susan, you received your doctorate in sacred theology in Rome at the Angelicum, where Pope Leo himself is an alumnus. How would you assess his theological approach so far?
I think it's very much coming from the way he understands his responsibility as Pope, as the Holy Father. So he speaks particularly to the role of the Pope as shepherd. He's spoken a lot about his primary emphasis needs to be on unity, so communion and mission. And so you see it very much grounded in the office of the papacy.
Absolutely. 100 days in, there's obviously still a lot we do not yet know about how Pope Leo will govern the church. For example, what actions will he take on Traditionis Custodes? What about the church in Germany, for example? What do you see as the major challenges Pope Leo still has to address and sooner rather than later. Stephen, I'd like to start with you in case perhaps there is a particular sexual abuse scandal that demands action right now.
Well, there are some high-profile cases that are sort of left over from the previous pontificate, and I'm sure he'll get to those in time. The high-profile case of Father Rupnik comes to mind. Personnel is policy, and he hasn't made most of his big personnel and curial appointments yet. So we'll see. That will dictate a lot. I think we need to give him time on this. You know, it's more important that he get these decisions right than that he gets it done immediately, especially coming out of the Roman summer, where mostly curia slows down, to put it generously, in the summer. So I think it will be a busy fall, and I think we'll have a much better sort of picture of where the church is going to go under him in the next couple months.
Susan, what immediate challenges does Pope Leo face?
So I would say, obviously, the continuing implementation of the synod, right? The bishops' conferences around the world are being expected to do some implementation of some of those priorities.
Right.
He recently spoke to the coordinators of the synod and said, you know, our emphasis needs to be on communion and participation. So it'll be interesting to see how he begins to define what he means by that, what he hopes to see will continue from that work. That's one. The other, I would say, is the appointment of women, the leadership of women in the church. Pope Francis began to make some appointments. It'll be interesting to see how Leo wants to continue that, to raise the profile, in a sense, to recognize the women who are in leadership positions.
I think those are two issues in particular people are watching closely to see what actions he takes. Stephen, when Cardinal Robert Prevost was elected, there were two people in particular who were very busy with media interviews, and those were his two older brothers, Louis in Florida, John in Chicago. And so while most of his religious life has been spent outside of the U.S., his brothers are this reminder that he does know America all too well still. Our EWTN News Vatican editor, Frank Rocca, he dubbed Pope Leo the quiet American so far. That seems to be his approach. But how much, Stephen, do you expect our Holy Father to be weighing in on U.S. matters, whether it's political or church matters happening here?
Well, I don't expect he'll break much from sort of the way popes usually handle these things. I think he will continue to speak in defense of migrants, in defense of the unborn. He'll generally speak in sort of more general terms. It would be rare for him to intervene or to sort of name a U.S. politician directly, for example. That can happen, but it's rare. And I think it's difficult for a pope to interfere without making things worse. So I think it would be he'd be very cautious to do that. And there are a lot better ways for the church to make its presence known and its thoughts known than sort of straight from the top a lot of times. So I think he'll be circumspect in that.
And he does seem to be so intentional about every action.
And being clear and deliberate in what he does say, I think makes it easier for local pastors, and we've got plenty of those here, to do what they need to do and feel that they've got the support of Rome. But you don't necessarily need a direct intervention from the Vatican on everything.
Susan, how does the Pope's command of communication, how can that really contribute to evangelization efforts of the church?
I mean, it'll contribute tremendously anytime people hear someone speaking in their own language, and certainly English and Spanish represent a fair amount of the Catholic world. So the ability to communicate directly, I think the ability to move between languages in this day and age where so many of our communities are multicultural just plays into this idea that this is tremendous unity in the church among a great diversity.
Absolutely. I'm curious what you both think of his use of English at times and his notable not use of English at times. Do you think he's, very wary of not coming off as too American for our global church?
I think he's probably aware of that, but you used the phrase earlier, quiet American. He is not the stereotypical sort of loud, brash American personality, or at least I think a lot of the world sees that through Hollywood or whatever, and sometimes from real life. He's not that. And so I think he's probably aware of not coming off as the American Pope.
Right.
At the same time, there are a lot of people in the world who speak English who are not Americans, as our Canadian and English and Australian friends are tremendous. So I think, as Susan said, his ability to move sort of effortlessly between these different languages, including the major languages, not only of the Curia, speaking Italian, but English and Spanish being major languages for the Church. I think that just builds on what we've already said, this sort of this ease of personality, his ability to communicate sort of effortlessly and come across as sort of just who he is.
I have less than a minute left with you both, so just final moment with you. What will you be looking out for in the coming months of Pope Leo's pontificate? Susan?
I'll be looking for the way that he defines and talks about mission. Mission is so important to him, and I think building on Pope Francis's attention to who we are as missionary disciples, it will be really interesting to see how much he wants to engage people in the life of the church.
And Stephen?
I'll be looking at curial appointments. I mean, that would be interesting to give some sense of where he wants to go, but also just how he grows into the role himself. It's still early for him. He's still figuring out what kind of pope he's going to be, and I think as he gets a better sense of that, so will we.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen, Susan, thank you both so much.
Thank you.